thank you everyone for joining. My name is Kunal Jogia. If you don't know me, I am one of the sales and account executives from Relay 42 that look after the UK and Ireland region for the business. Also, I'll get Tom to do his introduction, but we have our partners from Tapad joining us today. And today's session, really, we have a case study for us to run through to show you how identity management has yielded an 85% consistency in an ID for one of our customers, working alongside Tapad and actually as well as Miles and his team from OMD. So we'll go through that. So before we kick off, I would like to introduce you to Tom. And Tom, please introduce yourself and introduce Tapad to the guests.
Sure. Thanks, Kunal. And very nice to meet everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I know this is a breakout session. I'm Tom Rolph. I lead the Tapad team across EMEA and APAC regions. I've been with Tapad for the past 4 years now, overseeing the growth and the adoption of our identity solutions. And we've been working with Relay for roughly about a year now in terms of this particular partnership. And obviously, we're going to talk more about a case study that towards the end of this. But really excited to sort of grow this partnership with Relay and their clients in the identity space. So, yeah, nice to meet you all.
Yeah, and I guess to set the scene for us, just before we get into details, as you know, for Relay 42, ID management is the core of what we do as a business, and helping our customers to build a persistent ID on. And for us, we have to also think about how we work with the ecosystem and partners. And for us, Tapad are a really key strategic partner for us in helping our customers to be able to address identity, but also to address the ever-changing landscape that is, I guess, Tom will talk about cookieless world, but also how do we build persistent IDs, all those kinds of things. So we'll try to cover that today in this breakout session. So Tom, please can you give me a bit of information around Tapad, who you are, and a little bit about the business for people who don't know you.
Yeah, sure. So, for those of you listening into Miles's session just now, identity really has sort of come to the fore in everyone's conversations in 2020. There have been a number of curveballs that thrown by Google and Apple, but we're well positioned to navigate around those. I mean, Tapad has been in this game a while now. We've had a device graph product for just coming up to 10 years. We've been the pioneers and leaders in the identity space, well, in device graph and now identity space for that time. And today we're really one of only true global cross-device graphs in the market. In terms of us, privacy has to come first, and it really does. It's first with everything that we do, whether that's data collection, data storage, the commercialization of the data. Privacy really is at the heart of everything that we do, and we are truly global. We operate across all markets globally. We have significant scale in terms of a footprint, and what we're doing as an ID graph and an identity graph is really connecting disparate digital identifiers, right? So we've listed them out there on the screen. But essentially what we're doing is connecting all of these different IDs so we can provide brands and clients with a single customer view of the consumer at the hierarchical level, so at the household or the individual, where we're unifying IDs and then providing extension and amplification of each of those IDs and clusters at each of those individual and household levels.
And I think we'll touch upon later, Tom, but it's interesting. I think, obviously, like you said, you've been around for a long time, and I think typically people think about device graphs, particularly around cookies and third-party cookies. But looking at what you're talking about there, it's actually a lot more than that, right? It's a lot more than just cookies that you're collecting or helping to build the graph and helping your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll move on to this slide because I think, actually first let me talk about where we're accessing the data and how we're building the graph. So we have over 100 data partnerships in place today where we are ingesting trillions of signals from each of those partnerships, and we're combining the, I guess, machine learning algorithms that we have within our network with deterministic data sets. So again, sort of nod to what Miles was talking about earlier. We're really combining both the probabilistic and deterministic or unauthenticated with authenticated data sets using the signals again, which are on the screen. And you're right, Kunal, that the third-party cookie is has been around for a long time, and of course is part of these identity graphs today. But what's important is that it's not the only identifier that we have. We're also using so many other IDs which are non-third-party cookie dependent. We're already ingesting data from our partners and collecting insights that are not connected to third-party cookies. And that's something that will continue, or it has to continue. And it's something that Tapad is doing today and will continue to do, along with several players in the market as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's it's a great insight, because I think people do get confused with what IDs are available via partners like yourselves or people or companies like yourself in the ecosystem. So I guess that leads us on to, so what kind of ways can you access that data, or what kind of clients and businesses within the ecosystem do you work with to get access to that data?
Yeah, so I think the beauty of an ID graph and in particular is that it's completely customizable and can be tailored. So we would work with so many different identifiers that clients or brands or companies have, and have a capability of connecting them together and providing additional attributes and other identifiers and features to that. So actually, in terms of our client base, it's really quite spread between the whole ecosystem, agencies, brands, and ad tech and martech platforms and providers as well. But I think, over time, in the way that we've evolved, the Tapad graph is available or can be accessed really by two ways. One is through a channel partnership, and the other one is a direct partnership. Now, there are different benefits and use cases to that, and we've listed those at the bottom of this slide here. Those first two at the top, the retargeting and the reach and frequency capping, are predominantly for media activation. So there's running a campaign as a line item. You can apply it on a DSP and pay a CPM against it. But you're not really getting much else on the back of that. You might be hitting your campaign metrics and performance, but there's no long-term capability of really understanding the detail of the identity or the audience and the consumer behind that. And that's where the direct licenses come in. And I think particularly with this partnership with Relay, is that it opens up all of these other use cases and benefits, because you'll get your hands on the raw data. And I'm not going to go through them all, but I will call out just the one at the bottom here, persistent ID, because again, nod to Miles, he was talking about persistence in his session. And the case study that we have at the end is really focused on that persistent identifier, and I've got the good stats to share.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's I guess the great fit between the two companies, Relay and Tapad, and how do we help customers, brands, advertisers build a persistent ID that they can have the flexibility to be able to move across for activation, but ultimately as well have the raw data for insights to build better persistent ID, which is unique to them, because I think each customer will have what a definition of what ID management means for them, and it's always going to be different from different sectors, different industries. So that's really good to know, and I guess to share with everyone today. So I think before we get into, I guess, what are the common challenges in when you're thinking about identity and how to solve it, I think we have a poll up next, which I think would be good to understand what everyone's what they would think are the challenges. So if you go to the poll on the right hand side, I think Kalina has put that there for us. Thanks, Kalina. Yeah, it'd be good if everyone can give everyone a couple of minutes to answer the poll to understand what their the biggest concerns are when it faces or the evolution of identity. Cool. It's not really a surprise there with some of the answers. I think they're not all exclusive answers, are they, Tom?
No, yeah. There we go. It's to be expected. I mean, it's a bit of a trick question. I mean, the biggest, all of these are concerns, and valid concerns, and so, you know, I'd be more surprised if one was much higher than the others. But what is interesting is probably that scale and privacy are coming out numbers 1 and 2, because that is aligned with what we're seeing.
Absolutely. It'd be good if you could share some of the things that you as a business see day in, day out, talking to the industry and brands and advertisers.
Yeah, I mean, so the digital ecosystem's in the middle of its biggest ever evolution, and you know, we are moving towards this cookieless world, and I think yes, I can see why it's scary to some marketers, and certainly the ones that we have spoken with over the past 9-10 months have come to us and asked us, just basically being honest with us and said, yeah, look, they're in it. It's a bit scary, and want us to help them. But I think our position is that at the end of the day, marketers are going to have more control and greater freedom as a result of all of this. So it should really be seen as an opportunity. I mean, you're already sitting on such rich customer data, whether that's emails or phone numbers or first-party data, first-party cookies, mobile ad IDs, etc. And you know, the challenge has always been to connect the dots between those different silos of data points. That's still the same challenge. It's just how we go about doing that. And I guess back to the position of the ID graph that we have, it's not reliant on one single identifier. The third-party cookie has been around a long time, but I think there's too much reliance on it. I mean, it wasn't designed to be the glue that holds the whole ecosystem together. You know, it has its challenges, and I think
absolutely, Tom. I think absolutely. I think it has its challenges, and I think it's been potentially misused by the industry. I think it was designed initially to provide a personalised customer experience, a more relevant customer experience, but the industry's taken it from that to do other things with it, and then the reliance has been too heavy. I think this, like you said, exactly what you said, is this gives the marketers the opportunity to take that control back, and advertisers and brands to think about actually what data do we have and how can we focus on our first party data, but to ultimately provide the best customer experience, right?
Yeah.
And also then it comes to the fact that I think it then lends to two things, right? As companies like Relay and Tapad, it's I guess our role to help customers to think about actually this is an opportunity to take that control, and secondly, to think about how can it help to solve some of the business objectives that companies have, and how we can think about and what they should think about when looking for an ID solution or an ID management capability, right, Tom?
Yeah, exactly. I think, sorry to sort of keep referring back to Miles's presentation, but there is so much synergy between it, obviously. And he was listing out the different types of solutions on the market. And there are different solutions, but they all do things slightly differently. And I think, you know, we've pulled out a few questions, essentially, which we feel should be asked to any ID vendor or data partner when going out and speaking to people. You know, and we haven't got time to go through all 5 of them, but what was interesting is that the top 2 responses on the poll were about privacy and scale, and so I'll pull out those 2 because in terms of privacy, yeah, of course, you're going to want to understand what went into the creation of the IDs. Did it involve fingerprinting? Are there clear mechanisms to collect consumer consent or consumer preferences? And does it include the ability to opt out? And it's all like so hugely crucial that before engaging in any partnership, all of those things are uncovered and made clear. And the second one around scale, you know, there is lots of talk about using hashed email address, telephone numbers, login IDs. The question is whether they will have the scale to match the cookie, you know, particularly as we look not only in each individual country and do they have the scale to provide, to replicate within one particular country, but global brands, this is even more important because is there a solution out there that has the scale to work across all markets? Currently, they suffer from limited coverage, so they're growing, of course, but scale is definitely a challenge. And of course, there's also the question about how many people would actively contribute an email address or a login ID to access content. I mean, we know from the cookie asking consent through cookies, it sort of sits at about 80-85%. It won't be that high with email address or login IDs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's I think you see from consumers there's a lot more they're a bit more savvy when it comes to giving their data, aren't they? Now with GDPR, and it feels a little bit different when you give an email address or a telephone number versus just clicking on a pop-up on a website to accept cookies. So it's about it is about that element of scale and how you can potentially look at new identifiers or work with new partners to build your identifiers or your first party identifiers, and I think that is really, really important.
Yep.
Really, really important. And I think always coming back to this, right, I think it was the second answer there around privacy. And I think it'd be good if you could give a little bit more detail around how Tapad addresses privacy and what bodies and the industry bodies that you as a business
sure
are part of and what that means. Because I think there has been, I guess, over time a bit of skepticism around third-party devices. So it'd be really good if you could address some of those things.
Yeah, no problem. And this is crucial and critical. You know, as I've said before, Tapad is privacy comes first with everything that we do. I mean, we operate globally and we take regulation very seriously. So in EMEA, we follow all GDPR framework, as well as IAB's Transparency Consent Framework, TCF. We support the provision of clear notice to consumers and easy opt-out choices. So there are an increased communication options in our privacy notices. And that means that we're holding our data providers and our partners accountable for the collection of consent and opt-ins. You know, we're not a consumer-facing business. We have to work with our partners and clients to make sure that everything that they're doing is also in line with our take to the regulations.
Yeah, and I guess with recent news of merging with or being acquired by the old company that I used to work for, Experian, but even previous to that, you being part of a big telco like Telenor, two big companies who with privacy. I mean, I speak for working at Experian previously, how a company like that, how privacy is so important, especially being FCA regulated. Yeah. Around collecting data. It probably says a huge amount and gives you guys that credibility that you had with Telenor, but even more so, I guess, with Experian as well, a credit services kind of business.
Yeah, it does. I think it speaks volumes to our position with privacy when, we were acquired by I think the 8th largest telco in the world in Telenor 4 years ago, and only a couple of weeks ago got acquired by Experian. So yeah, I think that's testament to our position on privacy, among many other things, obviously. But with regards to privacy, I think it does speak volumes as to how seriously we take it.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's really, really important in especially where we are within our industry today.
Yeah.
So cool. I know we are coming towards the end, but we wanted to really then focus in on how do we bring this to life? And I think with the case that we have, it'd be great if you could run through this for us, Tom.
Yeah, sure. So this particular case study is actually a 4-way partnership between OMD, Relay 42, Tapad, and obviously the client, who is an international travel client. Now, they wanted to build user profiles so that they can target them across devices, across multiple different devices, as a long tail approach to the travel booking season. They wanted to reduce dependency on a single type of identifier. And we've talked about the third-party cookie at length, but also increase the opportunities to reach consumers through several months of the year via audience extension. So they had quite some lofty goals. Their approach was to create a persistent ID. That would mean that they don't lose all the rich audience-based data when they're running campaigns, and they can move away from third-party cookie dependency. So the first thing is that we collected first-party data initially via the Relay platform. And then we used the Tapad graph to unify and extend the view of those users within audiences from cookies to mobile ad IDs. These mobile ad IDs are then matched across channels for activation. And obviously, no one saw COVID was coming, but due to the objectives that were set in the first place, it meant that despite the delays that COVID created, the relaunch of this campaign, by the time that came around, these user segments were able to be maintained and the scale was retained due to the persistent ID that we'd created. And in terms of results, there are three big takeaways here. So we achieved 85% retention rate of user profiles from Q1 to Q3. So when the campaign was ready to resume again, still had 85% of those user profiles, which wouldn't have had in another without this. Now, OMD estimated they would have lost at least 90% of these profiles from the first touch point if they hadn't had the solution. And what that meant was that they'd basically protected the multi-million-dollar investment for their client through the Tapad graph and through Relay. So, it's an incredible example of when there's a long decision window for consumers. I mean, obviously this is a travel related case study, but it's not sector specific. I mean, it obviously could also be applied to things like mortgages or house buying, auto, telco, anything where there's a long decision window.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I think it's really interesting for like, just not travel industry, right? It really gives a whole different, the whole different perspective of how we could use this in other sectors. And for me, it comes to like that, even things where CPGs potentially, even where they might not necessarily have as many IDs, etc. But over time, this would mean that they could, once they have that first engagement with the customer, they could then build a segment that they could potentially use 6 months down the line that could be a bit more persistent, right? Because you don't really necessarily, are buying or engaging with those brands directly all the time.
Yep.
Cool. I know we are. Go on, Tom. Sorry, you got to say.
How are we doing for time?
Yeah, I was just about to say we've got a few more minutes, so I think we'll be good if we've got a few more minutes. Some Q&A. If there's any questions. While we wait for the questions to come in, I definitely had one for you. As Tapad and yourself, where do you see, like identity management in the next 6, 12, 18 months going, even with, obviously, then we'll see the results of what Google do at the end of next year. What do you guys see happening in the evolution of the industry?
Yeah, okay. Because it's only going one way. It's only going to grow and become more important. I don't see there being a one solution coming in and replacing the third-party cookie. That's just not going to happen. There's going to be 3 or 4 different solutions or say methods that a client can use, and maybe even a combination of them, because at the end of the day, each brand, each client is different with regards to the data assets that they own, and what their objectives are. And I think there are different solutions on the market, or will be, to work with each of those. And in some cases, combinations of them. So I see more companies popping up in this space. And I see the few companies that operate in it continue to evolve. But I think it's exciting. I genuinely do. I think this is not something to be scared about. This is an evolution, and it's going to be step by step as well. This is not something that's going to happen overnight. You're not going to flick a switch and say, right, we're going to start working with X provider and solve everything. Let's not forget, third-party cookies are still going to be around for another 12 months. So it's finding that it's finding that step-by-step process and working with partners who can guide you through those steps and those that evolution.
Yeah, I always say to the customers that I'm speaking to, we should take advantage as we can, right, for the next 12 months as well, right? There's lots of data to be had there. There is one question there from Roberto. He's asking, the maids could be collected only if you have a proprietary app by an SDK, right?
Okay, so that's probably, is that in relation to how Tapad go about collecting mobile IDs, mobile ad IDs? So that's through a number of partnerships that we have. Now, we do have some partnerships who have SDKs, and we ingest a lot of those through them. But we also work with all of our clients who provide us those identifiers to help them so that we can build out their own specific graph. So we're ingesting those directly from customers as well as through SDKs.
Okay, thanks. I'm not sure if there's any other questions. Just waiting to see if there's any direct questions that's come along. That Robert's said thank you. I think I had one more question for you, Tom. If you're a brand today, and you're thinking about, you should be, I guess most brands, and you've probably seen a lot of traction in the last 6 months or 12 months, investigating how to go about this. What would be, I think, your one or two of your biggest takeaways around how to think about the strategy and the evolution to get in there, and try to find the right partners that might work for them? Do you have any couple of tips or ways of potentially thinking about it?
Yeah, I think it's really about looking at your data assets and what you're trying to achieve. You know, if you've got, do you have emails? Do you have phone numbers? Are you, how reliant have you been on the third-party cookie? And then go and speak to solutions on the market, to see whether they have got the necessary requirements or solutions that they can that can help them. You know, as I said, there's not many people who can provide the expertise, and not many companies who are in this space who can help. So go and speak to as many people as you can. That's it's going to be time consuming, but ultimately that's how you're going to choose who's the right partner to be working with.
I think my final comment there would be, it's just also speak to people internally within your organisation, find out where the data sits, because I think that's always one of the biggest challenges that we come across when speaking to customers is, there's lots of data within your own organisation that you might not necessarily have access to. I know a lot of the time we're talking about media and activation and paid channels, but also owned channels. People that own the in-house data is something that you should always talk to as well, right? So I think that's
I couldn't agree more with that point either. That's certainly what I find. I mean, we're talking to programmatic teams and talking to analytics teams and talking to tech teams, and quite often they're not actually talking to each other. Even though the benefits are there for each of them, they're only sort of thinking in their silos and working on their own sections. So I couldn't agree more. More talk internally is going to help with this as well.
Perfect. Tom, could I ask you to flick over to the next slide? I think we have run over a couple of minutes, so I think it was some good debate there and great conversations. And thank you, Robert, for your question as well. Firstly, I want to say thank you, Tom, for your time and putting the content together. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone who enjoyed the session. Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you, everyone, for joining the session today. Thank you for your participation. And see you all in the next few sessions. Thank you. Thanks, Tom.
You're very welcome. Thanks, everyone.